The Arab Sugar Daddy and the Beautiful Indian Girl. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is a one-sided love story between a rich old Saudi man and a beautiful poor Indian girl. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. It is a story that was narrated in 6 books. Book 1. The Arab Sugar Daddy falls in love with a beautiful poor Indian girl. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by the reviewer, who may quote brief passages from the review for printing in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 44. She was finding help in the Sahara Desert. When the light of dawn ascended, Ifit's eyes became heavy with sleep and she could not stay awake any longer. She held on to the body of her mother and went to sleep on top of her. A couple of hours later, the hot sun and the moving sands of the desert woke her up before she could sleep too long. She has become very thirsty and hungry. Her thirst and hunger forced her to get up and move away from the lifeless body of her mother. She kept walking and now and then she stopped and then she looked back at her mother's still body. The road that she is walking on is rough and full of holes. Whenever one of her little feet stepped into a hole, she would fall. She fell many times on the dusty, barren road. The little girl Ifit had not walked for more than an hour before her eyes spotted a tent. She has never seen a tent before. She instinctively walked in the direction of the tent. She left the road and began to walk on the sand. She began to walk with much difficulty because the sand slowed down each step she made. Sometimes, her small feet sank into the sand up to her knees. Fortunately, she has not gotten stuck in what is like quicksand. When she got closer to the tent, she could hear the sounds of animals, chickens, and the voices of human beings. Before she reached the tent, Ifit saw someone come out and begin to walk toward her. When she saw him, she became very frightened of his strange appearance. She has never seen a person like this before. His clothes are different from any clothes she has ever seen in her life. In his right hand, he is carrying a stick, and in his left hand, he is carrying a whip. Ifit has become frightened and thinks that the man is coming to beat her up with his stick and whip. She turned around and began to run away. The man ran toward her and overtook her. She began to scream when the man grabbed her and picked her up with his hands. She is shouting and looking at his face. She began to beg him in Hindi not to beat her. The man smiled and talked to her in Arabic. He could see the little girl speaking another language. He understood the reason for her fear and threw down the stick and the whip. The little girl Ifit has felt less afraid when the man threw down his local weapons. The Arab man carried Ifit back to his tent. When he brought her inside his tent, Ifit found she was in the presence of other children like herself and a woman like her mother. The woman gave her water and some food. After she ate the food and drank the water, the woman gave her milk to drink. The milk somehow reminded Ifit of seeing her mother nursing her baby brother. Arabic. He could see the little girl speaking another language. He understood the reason for her fear and threw down the stick and the whip. The little girl Ifit has felt less afraid when the man threw down his local weapons. She tried to tell the man and his wife that her mother is lying dead outside. When they could not understand her, she caught the hand of the woman and began to pull her out of the tent. The man understood what the little girl wanted to convey to them and told his wife to go with her. The woman got up and walked outside the tent with the little girl. The man came outside too and followed them. Ifit took them back to the road and pointed in the direction where her mother is lying either dead or buried alive in the hot desert sand. She continued to pull the woman by the hand and walk her toward the place where she left her lifeless mother. It took them less than an hour to reach the area. When they arrived, they found Hannah lying in the sand. Half of her body has already been buried by the moving winds of sand. The man has never seen the face, hands, legs, or body of a woman so openly spread and exposed before him, except his wife. He is so struck by the marvelous beauty and the physical attractiveness of Rayhana's body despite her obvious wounds and bruises. His wife had different feelings when she saw Rayhana's body. She thought she is already dead. Nevertheless, she bent down and put her ear upon the chest of the woman. Then, she told her husband in the Arabic language that the woman was still alive. At first, she does not want her husband to touch the body of a woman who is not his wife. So, she tried to lift Rayhana to carry her, but the dead weight of her unconscious body made it impossible for her to do it alone. She told her husband to carry her instead. The man immediately bent over the body of Rayhana and pulled her up. His wife helped him to put Rayhana's body upon his shoulder. Rayhana's body slowed the man down and his wife came from behind, took Rayhana's legs, and put each leg on each one of her shoulders. The man felt a little relief when his wife helped him, but he is shaking from head to toe. He has never touched a woman other than his wife, nor has any woman's body ever come so close to his, except for his wife's body. He felt a strong desire for sexual intercourse. If the little girl is not with them, he might have had sex with his wife out in the open. He remembered that his prophet Muhammad saw a woman walking on the street and he got sexually tempted by her. He ran to his wife Zainab bint Jahash as she was tanning leather. He ignored what she was doing and promptly had sex with her. That done, he went back to his companions and said, "When the woman comes toward you, it is Satan who is approaching you. When one of you sees a woman and feels attracted to her, he should hurry to his wife. With her, it would be the same as with the other woman." Notwithstanding, the feeling of the body of Rayhana on his shoulders and hands drove the man extremely crazy. He waited impatiently until they reached their place. As soon as they laid down the half-dead woman in one tent, he pulled his wife out and took her to where they kept their livestock. Out in the open, he jumped over his wife. His wife understood what the problem is and hence she does not resist or object to her husband's pouncing on her driven mad with lust. She has never felt the full aggressiveness and force of her husband's sexual passionate feelings or the powerfulness of his desire to such a magnitude. This time she enjoyed sex with him so much because, for the first time in her life, she experienced an orgasm. Relieved of his lust, the man managed to tell his wife to go back to the tent and take care of the strange woman. He feared going back to the tent and seeing the extremely beautiful woman in her exposed condition again becoming sexually aroused and jumping on her. The people who rescued Rayhana and her daughter are Arab Bedouins living in the vast Saudi Arabian desert. Although they are in the 21st century, they still live as they do in the 7th century. They do not know that they are living in a country that has geographical and political boundaries. They are nomadic and move freely from place to place in the desert. The Bedouin woman used water to revive Rayhana. She kept sprinkling drops of water on her face until Rayhana opened her eyes. She could not see anything, but her mouth moved. The Bedouin woman began to pour some milk onto her dry lips and mouth. The Bedouins believe that if someone is dehydrated from exposure to the desert sun, water is not the best thing to give him. They believe that milk is preferable in this instance. Rayhana's treatment and recovery are awfully slow. For 24 hours, she could not fully open her eyes or eat anything. Every few hours, the Bedouin woman kept alternating milk and water slowly into her mouth. She used Dettol liquid to treat her bleeding wounds and cure her big cuts. She changed her blood-stained clothes and dressed her in one of her black abayas and niqabs. Rayhana did not get any proper medical treatment. Therefore, her recovery is slow and took a long time. During her treatment, the man never came inside the tent. He ate and slept outside. His wife brought him food and water. At night, she came and slept with him. The Bedouin family is part of a big tribe of Bedouins who live in tents. They are nomadic people. They move from place to place according to the seasons of the year. The Bedouins have always lived in the desert. Once or twice a year, the men go to a nearby suburb and purchase commodities for their families. The Bedouins' animals supply them with whatever food is needed. These families have many animals. They have dogs, cats, chickens, cows, goats, sheep, donkeys, and camels. They keep dogs to guard the family and to protect their other animals. They keep cows to supply milk. The goats and lambs are used for two purposes: to sell some of them once or twice a year to earn income, and to slaughter a goat or a sheep each month to feed the family. The chickens are used for producing eggs to eat. The family will also slaughter the chickens for food. Donkeys and camels are used for transportation. Howbeit, donkeys are used for traveling short distances, like going to a nearby suburb. The nomadic Arabs use camels for traveling long distances. The camels and the donkeys are for the Bedouins like cars and trains to the modern world, for they are used as transportation to move from one place to another or to a faraway place. The camel is an especially important and valuable animal for desert people because it provides transportation, food, and milk. The Arabs call the camel the desert ship. The Arab Bedouins love to drink the milk of the female camel. It is the only milk they can drink without boiling. They also drink camel urine when they fall sick. The Prophet Muhammad ordered his followers to drink camel milk and urine whenever they fell sick. Whether we accept the camel's urine as proper medication or not, many Muslims drink it to cure their sickness because the alleged prophet of God had recommended it for treatment. A visitor to a Bedouin family might think at first that the only animals the family keeps devoid of any benefit are the cats. However, he would soon discover that of all the animals, the cats are the most useful. They are kept forwarding off mice, rats, snakes, scorpions, and lizards. For 1 month, Rayhana and her daughter Ifit have been allowed to stay with the good Bedouin family. They treated them as if they were their family members. Ifit has been treated as if she is a daughter born into the family. The Bedouin man did not harass Rayhana in any way. He always kept himself at a far distance from her. His wife is the same age as Rayhana. They have 3 daughters and 1 son. Their children are all younger than Ifit, but as soon as the new girl came into their family, they began to like her and play with her. The little Indian girl Ifit, in a surprisingly short time, was able to pick up some Arabic. Although she is living among good and harmless people, Rayhana constantly thinks of her 5 sons. She also thought a lot about her old mother. She knows that she has left her sons and her mother enough money to live on for a long time. But how could her mother feed her 5 grandsons after all the money had finished in buying their food? Would she send her grandchildren into the streets to beg for money and food as she did when Rayhana went to prison for 6 months? And what would happen to her small children if her old mother died? For these reasons, Rayhana understood that one day she would have to leave the good Bedouin family. She would either have to find some work to earn money to send back home, or she would have to return to India to work again as a slave maidservant in the homes of wealthy people to feed her poor family. It took her 1 month to come to that agonizing conclusion. Chapter 45. The Caravan Trip Across the Arid Desert. One of the major problems for Rayhana Khan is where she would go to find some gainful job and how she would get to this work. She fears the Saudi police might arrest them again because they have no official papers. She left their Saudi visas in the police car of those 2 demonic Arab men who brutally raped her in the desert a month ago. Shortly after pondering this dilemma, a solution presented itself with the appearance of the Bedouin man who happened to be preparing the saddle of his donkey for a desert caravan trip. He said he is going to the nearest suburb to sell one of his sheep and to buy some commodities for his family. His preparation has not gone unnoticed by Rayhana, and she motioned for him to take her with him on the donkey. She initially thought about leaving her daughter with the Bedouin family to venture out to find work or a solution to her problem. Then she can come back and take her beloved daughter. The Bedouin woman objected and stood in between her husband and the beautiful Rayhana, flatly refusing to allow her man to travel alone with a strange young woman for endless hours. Additionally, another huge difficulty presented itself. As custom mandated by the Islamic Sharia law, Rayhana could not travel alone with him, for she is not his wife, sister, or daughter. His wife is acutely aware of her husband's behavior once he sets his eyes upon Rayhana's unconscious exposed body and carries her through the desert to their tent. She fully expected that he would either convince the beautiful Rayhana to sleep with him for a few Saudi riyals or force himself upon her should she refuse his sexual advances. The hadith of the Prophet Muhammad came to mind when a man and a woman are isolated in the presence of each. Satan is bound to be their third companion. The understanding woman Rayhana yielded to his wife's uneasiness with the situation and chose to take her daughter with her. Even so, the Bedouin woman is still not in favor of Rayhana accompanying her husband. She thought her husband might rape the small girl as well. To avoid such a recipe for disaster, which she concluded is highly likely to have unpleasant consequences, the strict wife asked her husband to leave the stranger woman with her and to travel alone. The Bedouin man insisted the stranger woman should come along to find her family. When his wife continued to strongly object, the angry man used his whip to chastise her. Rayhana felt guilty witnessing this sudden flogging. The kind woman who had taken care of her and her daughter for the past month is now being punished because of the presence of two uninvited female visitors. Rayhana's conscience greatly disturbed her, and she could not go against the wishes of her most loving female caregiver. Having practiced various forms of communication while staying with the Bedouins, Rayhana used gesturing and other body language in an attempt to resolve the matter and the guilty feeling she felt inside her heart. She took hold of the flogged woman's hand and beckoned the children to come along with them. It is in this way that she convinced the Bedouin man to bring his wife and children along with them. The Bedouin man seemed to understand, but looked unhappy with the additional company. The Bedouin customarily travels to the suburb on his donkey. On this particular trip, he changed his mind and decided to take his camel. He wants to show off his abilities to care for an extended family and the growing harem of women. The rest of his entourage has been given donkeys to mount. The first donkey for the Bedouin's wife and two of their children. Rayhana and her daughter shared their donkey with one of his daughters. This is Rayhana's first time riding a donkey. She has a nagging fear that the donkey might throw them off. The gentle beast soon placated her fear as it began to clop along dutifully behind the camel and the other donkey. Rayhana is preoccupied with thoughts of her unknown future, but gradually gives in to the newness of travel by a beast of burden. Her delight increased at the sound of the Bedouin singing in his native tongue. Not understanding the Arabic language, the lovely Indian woman somehow supposed that he was happy and singing to his camel. In those unfamiliar surroundings, Rayhana remembered her handsome lover and longed for his company and warm embraces. She wished Jamal is sitting with her on the donkey and singing romantic love songs to her in the Hindi language as she was enjoying the slow stride of the caravan along the desert small road. Whereas it takes only an hour by car to travel the same distance, the trip took 6 hours by slow-moving beasts of burden. It did not help that little children would now and then ask to answer the call of nature. As is the custom, a child urinates and defecates by the roadside. Lacking water or the option of toilet paper, the Bedouin children use stones to clean up their private parts. The Bedouin himself stopped his camel 3 times to relieve himself. Both Rayhana and the Bedouin's wife made a stop, and as the children, they used smooth stones to clean themselves. Using stones is a recommended practice in the religion of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad himself endorsed using 3 smooth stones for cleaning should there be no water. After cleaning, a Muslim is expected to utter the following prayer of thanksgiving to Allah: "Praise be to Allah who relieved me from my pain and filth." Muslims will proudly tell you that the Prophet Muhammad taught them everything about defecation and every matter of conducting daily life. From the time of awakening in the morning until one retreats to his bed at night, the Prophet Muhammad provides the commandments of Allah for the faithful. There are even instructions and regulations regarding a woman's menstrual cycle. Rules also dictate how a Muslim man should initiate sex with his wife. An Egyptian Muslim scholar, quoting the Prophet Muhammad, once said that on the wedding night, the bridegroom is permitted to remove all the clothing of his new bride except for her underwear. He added that it is unlawful for the man at any time or under any circumstances to touch or remove his wife's underwear. This right solely belongs to the woman. The Prophet Muhammad also said, when anyone goes to the lavatory, he or she should not touch his penis or her pussy nor clean his or her private parts with his or her right hand. Sahih al-Bukhari. Islam commands Muslims to use their left hand for this purpose. This left hand is not used for eating. As it goes, the right hand is for the mouth and the left hand is for the private parts. The travelers broke their journey to eating, and in this, the legacy of the Prophet loomed once more. The Prophet charged Muslims to eat and drink together from the same plate and cup. Following such a religious recommendation, it is recommended that a person must suck and lick his fingers after eating. This might sound unhygienic, but Muslims obey this because their alleged prophet of God dictates it. As the 6-hour journey drew to a close, the beasts of burden arrived at a suburb on the outskirts of Jeddah city. After some shopping, the Bedouins said their goodbyes to their uninvited guests, Rayhana and her daughter Ifat. After their farewell, they wished them a successful life and left. Rayhana shed tears while hugging the kind Bedouin woman and kissing her children goodbye. She offered her hand to the good Bedouin man to say goodbye, but he refused it. He muttered something in Arabic of which Rayhana understood only one word. As a Muslim, she is intimately acquainted with the word haram, which means forbidden. Not shaking hands with women is based on the words of the Prophet Muhammad, "I do not shake the hands of women," mentioned in Al-Tirmizi and Ibn Majah. The beloved wife of the Prophet, Aisha, said, "By Allah, the hand of the Messenger of Allah never touched another woman, other than his wives. He used to take their pledges verbally only." Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. As the Bedouins mounted up and rode away, Rayhana became emotional and troubled with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. She is tempted to take her daughter, go back to the loving Bedouins, and live with them forever. It was only the well-being of her family in India that forced her to restrain her rising panic and stay behind. She stood still for a long time while gazing at the loving family fading into the distance, disappearing from her life, and that of her daughter for eternity and infinity. They had been so kind and caring to them. But now that she is left all alone here with her small daughter, one worry has repeatedly troubled her. She wondered if the people in this holy city anything like the good Bedouin family would be. Long after the kind Bedouin family vanished from sight, she pondered her options. She and her daughter have no money. They have no shelter. They have no proof of identity. They have become nothing. What are they going to eat and where are they going to sleep? They have no protection. Anyone could take advantage of them or harm them. Chapter 46. A prostitute in the sacred land. As it is, while Rayhana is standing and looking at the people walking on the streets, 2 men are watching her very carefully. One wants to take advantage of her and the other intends to do her harm. The former is an Indian guy and the latter is a Saudi man. The Indian guy is a pimp from Hyderabad city. Before getting his Saudi Arabian visa, he was part of a marriage agency company that catered to foreign Arab old men wanting to purchase lovely young Indian brides. Hyderabad is the only city in India that has marriage agencies. The main business of these marriage agencies is the procurement of young female children for sex for pedophile Arab men. The Saudi guy who is watching the lovely woman Rayhana Khan, a correctional police officer, is carefully watching her while he is standing in a hidden corner. He has suspected her of being a Christian prostitute from the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, or India. He is reasonably sure that she is a Christian hooker because Muslim prostitutes such as Pakistani girls or Somali women prefer to render their services to men in the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. This is where big money can be made. For instance, if a foreign prostitute charges her client 100 riyals for sex in Jeddah city, in Medina city a Muslim hooker will demand 300 riyals and her counterpart will ask 1,000 riyals for sex in Mecca city. An infidel Christian prostitute by the order of the royal decree is not allowed to step foot in the Muslim holy cities. Being a prostitute in Saudi Arabia is the most dangerous job in the world. If a prostitute is caught red-handed, she is to be stoned to death the following Friday. If the correctional police officer finds a woman walking, standing all alone, or talking to a man other than her husband, father, or brother, he will arrest her as a prostitute. Countries that criminalize prostitution all have prescribed penalties for prostitutes, pimps, enablers, and sometimes for the customers. A Muslim country that applies Sharia law often requires the prostitute to be executed. The Indian pimp is desperately trying to discreetly draw the attention of the beautiful Rayhana so he could make a deal with her and hook her up with one of his wealthy Saudi clients. He has many wealthy Saudi customers for just such an illegal transaction. He is standing in a corner waving to her, but Rayhana has not seen him. She is deeply engrossed in her insoluble problem. He even whistled to her a few times, but she was preoccupied, miles away in thought. In another dark corner, the Saudi correctional policeman of Allah is hiding and impatiently passing the time. He is just waiting for a man to come and talk to the beautiful foreign woman or pick her up in his car. He could then have her stoned to death on the following Friday. He noticed the woman's little daughter with her, but that did nothing to sway his conviction she was a prostitute, because he knew full well that prostitutes often use children as a cover for criminal mischief. When no one approached the beautiful woman, he decided to punish her for a lesser crime. In Saudi Arabia, a woman is not allowed to be in public alone. She must be accompanied by her husband or a muharram, defined as a man whom it is unlawful for her to wed, such as her father, brother, or an adult son. A male cousin is not a muharram, because in Islam a woman is allowed to marry her male cousin or close kin. A muharram is also neither a father-in-law nor a brother-in-law, as the Prophet Muhammad has decreed that in-laws are like death to the wife. Rayhana, being alone on the street according to Sharia law, should be flogged. Still, while her feet have been rooted on the ground and her mind has been occupied by her indecision, Rayhana felt a sharp crippling blow on her back and another on her buttocks that paralyzed her and sent her to her knees. Ifrit screamed at the sight of her mother's assailant bearing a stick as tall as her height. As he lifted his stick once again and brought it down on the crumpled form of her mother's head, Ifrit turned and she fled for her dear life. Her escape is blocked by the Indian man. She is screaming, "Let me run, let me run, he is hurting my mother." She thought the correctional police officer was one of those bad men who had beaten her mother a month ago and left her dead in the desert. The Indian spoke to her in the Hindi language. Speaking urgently, he explained that he could save her and her mother from that bad man. All she has to do is say that he is her Indian father. The little girl, Ifrit, not knowing any better, agreed. Then, the Indian man rushed towards the correctional police officer with the little girl in his arms, animatedly announcing in Arabic that the woman was his wife and the little girl was their daughter. The correctional policeman of Allah looked suspiciously at the Indian man and then left without uttering a single word of apology either to the wife he had beaten or to her husband. Meanwhile, the battered Indian woman lay crumpled on the pavement weeping. She does not know why the Arab madman is beating her. The so-called correctional policeman of Allah is not wearing a uniform. He is like an unmarked police vehicle which is called ghost car. She could be forgiven for thinking he's crazy and a dangerous idiot, but she's not too far off from her guess. He is an Arab called Mutawa by functional definition, and his duty is to tame wild human animals. This is a man whose place in society is to domesticate savage women. This special designation comes because of the relative low status of Muslim women in Islamic societies. The degradation of women to the level of animals is enshrined in the misogynistic teachings of the Quran and the anti-feminist hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Amongst is the following, which says, "When one of you prays without a sutra or protection in front of him, a dog, an ass, a pig, a Jew, a Magian, and a woman annuls his prayer," mentioned in Sunan Abu Dawud, page number 2704. In his farewell speech, the Prophet Muhammad said, "Treat women well, for they are domestic animals with you and do not possess anything for themselves," mentioned by Al-Tabari, volume 9. Page number 1754. Rayhana is exceedingly enraged at the sight of the Indian guy carrying her daughter until she forgets about the crazy Arab man who assaulted her. Still weeping, she demanded of him, "Put down my daughter and do not touch her again. I have rescued you and your little daughter. Why haven't you called the police and have that evil man get arrested? He beat me for no good reason. You must be a new woman here in this country. That man is a correctional police officer. He would have arrested you and you would have been stoned to death if I had not come at the right time and rescued you from his hand. I haven't done anything wrong. I am just standing here with my daughter. He came behind me and just started beating me. He did not even talk to me or ask me to go. He must beat any woman he finds standing or walking without her husband, father, or brother. I lied to him and told him that you are my wife and this is our daughter, that is why he left you alone. Otherwise, he would have arrested you. By the way, where's your husband and where do you live? I have no husband. I have no place of my own. My daughter and I are strangers in this country which is full of evil men. Some policemen beat us and robbed us of our traveling papers. Rayhana began weeping again, and the Indian pimp knelt and comforted her. He promised to help her by inviting her to his apartment and extending an offer for free accommodations, with them both being Indians, Muslims, and speaking the same language and sharing the same culture. Chapter 47. An Indian Pimp in the Holy Country. The Indian man who rescued Rayhana Khan from the correctional policeman of Allah is called Aslam Ali Khan. He is the jack of all sex trades and the broker of all marriage ceremonies. He is prepared to do anything to make money. He is an Indian Muslim from Hyderabad. When he was in his homeland, Aslam used to work as a pimp and operate a big marriage agency. While there, in addition to his main business of selling young Muslim girls to the lustful old Arab men, he used to steal babies from hospitals and sell them to other pimps and gondas, to be raised as female prostitutes or recruited as male gangsters or perpetual beggars. Sometimes, they make the females into child prostitutes and hook them with the evil Arab pedophiles. Aslam Ali Khan also specialized in marrying simple village girls. Unbeknownst to those victim brides and their families, those mock marriages supplied more than 30 underage brides, only for them to be brought to the city of Hyderabad and sold to Muslim pimps who sold them to the Arab old men. Eventually, the Indian law enforcement officers caught him while he was stealing a baby from a local hospital in Hyderabad. The police interrogated him and were soon able to extract enough of an admission of guilt. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 20 years of confinement under hard labor. Just 10 months later, he escaped from prison and fled across the Indian border into Pakistan. There he bought a Pakistani passport and falsely claimed to have been born and brought up in Lahore city. He eventually made his way through a fake visa into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In Jeddah city, he found employment as a Pakistani taxi driver. Old habits die hard, and soon he began procuring prostitutes for his Arab customers. Sometimes, he used to connect his Saudi clients with Saudi women who were interested in making a little extra money by fornicating. Most of the Saudi women who cheat on their husbands are sexually frustrated wives. Therefore, his business is not limited to foreign prostitutes. He also supplies men for sexually frustrated Saudi women who are neglected by their polygamous husbands who married teenage girls. The Indian pimp Aslam Ali Khan deals with women from all over the world. He is also attracted to providing sodomy to gay Saudis who like to have sex with men or young boys. Having a high percentage of homosexuals within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Aslam began connecting Saudi homosexuals with interested parties. He makes more money in sodomy than in prostitution. The pimp Aslam Ali Khan is neither gay nor sexually impotent. He just fancied and loved making money for sex of any kind. Oddly asexual, he makes his living in a land with very odd sexual mores, where bestiality is common and tolerated. This phenomenon among Arab and Islamic countries includes bestiality with domestic animals such as goats, sheep, cows, ewes, donkeys, and horses. Occasionally, chickens or female camels would be raped too. On that day, Pimp Aslam Ali Khan took his new Indian escort Rayhana Khan and her young daughter, Ifat Khan, to his apartment. After hearing her story, he offered to marry her. Of course, the lovely Indian woman Rayhana rejected his marriage proposal upon hearing it. Then, he explained to her that she could not stay in his apartment if she was not his wife. He told her that the neighbors for sure will call the Saudi police and both of them would go to jail and both get stoned to death. Rayhana remained unmoved. Finally, the pimp convinced his victim to marry him on paper. Rayhana fell for this well-worn trap and agreed to marry him in principle. He has frightened her with the possibility of being stoned to death and leaving her small daughter in a country full of sex deviants and demonically possessed men who love to rape female children. When his victim Rayhana acquiesced to his demand and agreed to the mock marriage, Then a Pakistani imam was summoned to conduct their sham marriage contract only on paper without sex involved between the two. For Aslam Ali Khan, this is a well-traveled route. In his previous career, he acted as a matchmaker and an official who solemnized a marriage before the marriage court in Hyderabad. In the event, a Muslim girl fell in love with a Hindu boy, and her parents objected. It was Aslam's job to arrange the marriage in civil court. His duty was to provide the three witnesses, the wedding gown, the lawyer, and the judge, all paid with hefty bribes of course, and then a bona fide court marriage certificate was issued to the otherwise religiously unmarriageable couple. But very often such a rebellious Muslim girl would get killed by her father or brother when they came to know where she was hiding with her unrecognized Hindu husband. Once his new female victim Rayhana got married to him, Aslam invited one of his rich Saudi customers to his apartment to show her off. The Arab man is struck in awe at the vision of her loveliness and sexy body. She has far surpassed his definition of a beautiful woman. Each one of his 4 Saudi wives has a nose as big as an axe or a hammer and a face as ugly as a man's face. Becoming overeager in his longing for her, the Saudi old man requested time alone with Rayhana. He promised to pay whatever his pimp would ask for providing him with this lovely Indian woman as price. Aslam pretended to be grieved at heart, reminding the Saudi man that this lovely Indian girl is now his wife. He added that she had just arrived from Bombay and he showed him their new halal Islamic marriage certificate as a solid piece of evidence. The Saudi offered to double his offer if Aslam would agree to get down permanently from his wife and give her to him to climb on. This strange saying of raping someone's wife goes back to an ancient wives swapping custom between Arab men. The Prophet Muhammad forbade this custom at the time a great Arab chieftain asked him to get down from his beloved wife, Aisha, so that he could mount over her body. Muslim mujahideen throughout Islamic history praised themselves for climbing over the women of their infidel enemies. However, the Prophet Muhammad did not forbid the switching of female slave captives. Sex with female slaves, without marrying them, is permitted in Islam to this very day. See Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3. However, the alleged prophet of God allowed his followers to rape the women of their enemies even without marrying them, and if they are married and their husbands are alive. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, "The Apostle of Allah, may prayer and peace of Allah be upon him, sent a military expedition to Adas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunain. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captives. Some of the companions of the Apostle of Allah, may peace be upon him, were reluctant to have sexual intercourse with the female captives in the presence of their husbands who were unbelievers. So Allah, the Exalted, sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you except those captives whom your right hands are possessing." Sunan Abu Dawud, page 2150, referring to Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 24. This verse also permits temporary marriage, even if it is for 1 hour. Muhariz said, "I entered the mosque and saw Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. I sat with him and asked about withdrawing the male penis from the woman's vagina while having intercourse. Abu Sa'id said, we went out with the Apostle of Allah, may peace be upon him, on the invasion to Banu al-Mustalik and took some Arab women captive, and we desired the women, for we were suffering from the absence of our wives, and we wanted ransom. So, we intended to withdraw the penis, while having intercourse with the captive women. But we asked ourselves, can we withdraw the penis during sex while the Apostle of Allah, may peace be upon him, is among us before asking him about it? So, we asked him about it. He said, it does not matter if you do not withdraw the penis." Sunan Abu Dawud, page 2167. By withdrawing the penis from the female captive's vagina, they meant not to ejaculate inside her private parts and make her pregnant. They wanted to have sex with them, but they did not want to make those female captive women pregnant. If they make those captive women pregnant, then they could not sell them as female slaves and make profits out of such an evil form of slavery. Notice the Quran sanctions and endorses this evil practice until today, and that is why ISIS Mujahideen sold the Yazidi female captives as slaves in the Mosul slave markets. See Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3 and verse 24. Aslam Ali Khan agreed to get down from his so-called bride and accepted the deal, even though he is fully aware that Rayhana is neither his real wife nor a prostitute girl. Expecting her to resist and scream bloody murder and attract the attention of the neighbors, or even the police, the wicked pimp Aslam decided to take another route to protect his neck from being chopped by the sword of the police executioner. He decided to sell her to the Saudi man as a maidservant. That being the case, both buyer and seller would be on the safe side in case there is police involvement. Aslam argued with the Saudi man by mentioning that as long as his Indian wife was staying with him, he would be inclined to have sex with her or sell her to one of his other Arab customers. If you want to have her all to yourself, then you should take her to your house as a maidservant, says the evil pimp. The Saudi man broke into a broad smile at the brilliant idea that immediately would reduce Rayhana to an unpaid maidservant and sex slave. She will be working as his maidservant during the day and an unpaid sex slave at night. The price Aslam demanded was more than he had ever charged any one of his clients before. Writing down his client's address, he promised to bring Rayhana and her daughter to him the following day. The Saudi man wrote a check in Aslam Ali Khan's name for exactly half of the agreed-upon amount of money and promised to pay the balance upon delivery of his beautiful and sexy maidservant. As soon as the Saudi old man left, Aslam approached Rayhana in the other room of his two-bedroom apartment, and he gladly told her that he had found a particularly good job for her. He then said that the Arab man who came to their apartment was his good friend, and an exceedingly wealthy one at that, who just happened to be looking for a good Muslim woman to work in his house as a maidservant. Leaving out all of the other details, he painted a lovely picture of how she is going to work for him in his opulent residence, and how well she is going to be paid. Rayhana is ecstatic. She thanked Aslam repeatedly and called upon her exalted Allah and gracious Prophet to bless him and bless his parents in India abundantly. He has already calmed her fears and worries down and told her that she would live in his friend's house with her daughter, but would remain his wife on paper. As such, she would be able to return to his apartment anytime in case she does not like her new job or anyone in that residence tried to harm her. But in the back of his mind, the wicked pimp is already planning his next move to another apartment and hides his new address from her. Chapter 48. The Sexually Deviant Cannibal. The buyer of Rayhana Khan is an old Saudi man called Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid. He is older than his new maidservant's father. He is even older than Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed. This sheikh has already married and divorced several Saudi women. He is compulsively driven by his hunger for new women, but soon becomes tired of them. As a compulsive sex addict, he treats them like eatable meat. This Arab old geezer likes his meat fresh. Each new female victim will hear him saying to her, "I love your beautiful face and sexy body so much, and I feel like eating one of your breasts." Sheikh Hamza looks like the kind of man who might eat human flesh if any one of his sex female victims cut off one of her breasts and cooked it for him. None of his sex female victims escaped being bitten all over her body while having sex with him. He is that kind of sexually deviant cannibal. He is a notorious womanizer and scary sex sadist and looks like the devil incarnate. Therefore, Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid's infatuation for Rayhana has run deeper than the oceans. He has never liked any woman as much as he likes the lovely Rayhana, nor had he ever paid such a large sum of money for a woman's price before. This time, the Saudi sheikh is planning for once to keep a woman wholly to himself for good. He wants her to be his Habibiti, and he would be her only Habibi. When he first feasted his eyes upon the marvelous, beautiful face and sexy body of this young Indian woman, he thought she was a great Indian film actress. If Aslam had said Rayhana was once Miss Universe or film superstar actress in Bollywood, the Saudi would have believed him. From the time he paid the required deposit for her, he is waiting impatiently for his perpetual virgin of paradise to come to his house and satisfy his lustful desires, which only the hellfire flames can quench. Of course, Rayhana had not seen a single rial from this closed-door sex slavery transaction. As any good business owner, Aslam Ali Khan has decided to impress his valuable Saudi client Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid. He sacrificed a few riyals from the many thousands of riyals he received, which is the basic monetary unit of the Saudis. When this story took place, $1 equals 3.8 Saudi riyals. Then, the pimp Aslam Ali Khan took his latest victim Rayhana Khan to a beauty salon to prepare her for her new role as a maidservant bride. He convinced her that she would find more favor in the eyes of her employer and his wife if she had a beauty makeover. He claimed that Arab men like their foreign maidservants to look beautiful, which is true, but he did not explain to her why she has to be good-looking like domestic female help. Rayhana has never been to a beauty parlor before. She accepted the suggestion and went along with him, her daughter tagging behind them. At the beauty salon, her wicked pimp offered to take the little girl Ifit for a walk in the city. Rayhana does not trust any man with her little girl. Her painful and brutal rape experience in the desert with those two wicked Saudi policemen convinced her that men in this country can rape a female child of 7-year-old even in front of her mother. She apologized to Aslam and firmly told him that she would keep her small daughter with her. An old Filipino woman runs the beauty parlor. All the staff consists of Filipino young women too. According to the rules of the salon, no man is allowed to enter inside the taboo and forbidden salon, which is meant for totem women only. Every man who brought his wife would be told to leave and return in 2 hours. Aslam Ali Khan, like all others, is expected to comply with those ironclad rules. He introduced Rayhana as his new Indian wife, who had recently arrived in Jeddah City coming from Bombay City. From the service brochure, the pimp Aslam Ali Khan has selected the special preparations from the bride package for beautiful foreign young women. The female Filipinos marveled at the stunning beauty of the new bride who had earlier been hidden from them by her ugly black niqab. Rayhana remained enshrouded in her black abaya and niqab that had been gifted to her by the loving Bedouin woman. But as a required customary rule, she had been compelled by her pimp Aslam to open up her cocoon and show her beautiful face and sexy body to her Saudi buyer on the day she had been contracted as a sex slave to Sheikh Hamza. Her pimp somehow convinced her that no Arab man would employ a foreign woman as his maidservant if he has not seen her how she looks. The 3 Filipino beauticians set to work on Rayhana's hair, face, and body while the eagle-eyed salon female owner observed them from out of the corner of her left eye. The shrewd salon female owner is in the routine of collecting all money up front before any work commenced, and Aslam paid her in full. While every day reading her magazine or newspaper, she keeps a close eye on her 3 female workers. She is an extremely strict woman. She has, after all, come from the Philippines to the kingdom of Tartarus to make money. That is why she adamantly refused to have a second child despite her husband's pleading. Children cost money, and that is that. She told her jobless Filipino husband if he wanted to have another child, he should divorce her and marry another woman so she could give him 2 babies. Her husband is a committed Christian man and does not believe in divorce. Besides, he does not want to leave his rich wife and go for a young Filipino girl who is working as a maidservant under Arab employment. He knows the virtue and vagina of such a female sex slave would be shared by him and her kafil master. In addition, he might not get a chance to sleep with his wife for many days. She has to live and sleep with her Arab master, where she works as a maidservant during the day and a sex provider for her Saudi kafil at night. The Filipino beauty salon owner is quick to notice Rayhana's beauty but loses interest quickly, only to be immersed once again in her newspapers. She is acutely aware that her own eyes are tiny and her insecurities are not made better while looking at the remarkable, beautiful Indian bride Rayhana Khan, whose eyes are large and alluring. Small as her eyes are, they are quick and observant with a penchant for fine details. A corner of her eye swept across a photo of a woman in the newspaper. Her other eye stopped and decided to join its sister. She is the type of Asian woman who can use each eye to see a different thing. She can see with her left eye someone walking on the street, and her right eye can see a flying eagle in the sky. The size of the reward offered for information about the woman in the newspaper picture galvanized her into action. Jumping out of her chair, she slid over to Rayhana and scanned her face with the intensity of a mongoose sizing up a cobra. She could not find a single iota of difference between the photo of the beautiful woman in the newspaper and the lovely Indian woman that is sitting in the taboo area of her beauty salon. She remained silent and returned to her chair. Picking up the cell phone, she dialed the number mentioned in the advertisement and counted the seconds and minutes nervously, full of anticipation. This Filipino money-minded old lady has lost all interest in watching her female workers and reading her newspaper. A half-hour crept along, punctuated by the arrival of an old man running into the beauty salon. Except for this particular Saudi man, the Filipino salon female owner had never allowed any man to step inside her taboo area. She does not allow him to take his dead, resurrected, lost, and now found maidservant until he writes a check to her as is promised in the newspaper. The Filipino old woman has broken all her ironclad rules that day. First, she allowed a man to enter the taboo area of her salon where young Muslim women could be seen without abayas and niqabs on, where their faces were visible, open shoulders, and their thighs, hips, breasts, and buttocks exposed too. Second, she allowed the Saudi man to take a woman out of the salon, which he had not brought her to the beauty parlor. This is probably the most ironclad rule of the beauty salon. Only the person accompanying the young woman and paying her fees is permitted to come back and pick her up. Even her husband, father, or brother would not be allowed to lay claim to her if he was not the person who brought her there. Thirdly, without asking for proof of his identity or relationship to the lovely Rayhana, the Filipino old woman allowed the old man to take his lost and found maidservant after he wrote out a check and handed it to her. After examining the check and its amount very carefully, the happy Filipino businesswoman gave in to Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed's insistent demand for his beautiful Indian maidservant Rayhana and her cute daughter Ifat. The madman Qais could not believe his eyes when he came inside the taboo area of the women's salon and saw with his own eyes his lovely Layla after he had not seen her for ages. After about 30 minutes, the pimp Aslam Ali Khan is due to return for his new bride and deliver her by speed mail to her high bidder. Needless to say, upon his arrival, he is told that the Indian woman and her daughter have been taken away by their Saudi kafil. Aslam became extremely belligerent and started threatening to wreck the beauty salon. His anger has been dissipated once the salon's owner picked up her cell phone and threatened to call the Jeddah police on him. Quickly remembering his not-so-clean background and criminal history in the Kingdom of the Saudis, and the more than likely risk of getting his head chopped off or stoned to death on the next Friday noontime. Accordingly, Aslam's countenance changed and he begged the angry Filipino salon owner woman to forgive him for the intrusion. There is no need for her to call the Jeddah police, for he would leave quietly. Ever the shrewd one, he managed to convince her to part with the business card of his bride's sponsor, which included his cell phone number and address. Despite the phone being firmly in its cradle and the threat of beheading diminished, Aslam Ali Khan began to worry about his life. He has to devise a plan as quickly as possible to escape and hide somewhere in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to save his life from the wrath of Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid. He could either pay the sexually deviant cannibal a full refund of his purchase price, or either he could run and hide somewhere. He chose to run for dear life. The greedy pimp loves money more than he loves his life. Chapter 49. The Filipino Mrs. Chamchumchi, Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed, is a man accustomed to getting his way in life. He had tried every possible means to get possession of the most beloved Indian woman he had ever loved. He had gone to every police station in the city of Jeddah and showed the passports of his maidservant and her daughter to report them as missing 2 female foreigners and most probably got abducted. He lodged an official complaint against the 2 unknown police officers who allegedly had kidnapped his maidservant and her small daughter. He put ads in all the newspapers concerning the kidnapping of 2 Indian females, the mother and her small female child. He promised a huge reward for anyone who could provide information about the 2 missing Indian newcomers, lost in the land of no return. After a short time when no one had phoned him or had come forward and inquired about the reward, Sheikh Ahmed doubled the bounty. He paid the most popular newspaper in Jeddah to advertise and publish the photo of his kidnapped Indian maidservant Rayhana Khan every Friday. He chose Friday because it is the only official public holiday in Saudi Arabia. He anticipated that all Saudi citizens and foreign workers would be resting at their homes and apartments on this day and reading their newspapers. For more than 1 month and a half, the phone remained silent concerning this important issue. Therefore, the madman Qais is in great desperation. Day and night, he constantly lamented over his beloved, lovely Indian Layla, and he wondered about her mysterious disappearance. Because of her everlasting love, he went to jail for 6 months in Bombay, fought with the most dangerous Indian man, the lunatic Muhammad Khan, and endured the cruel beatings of the dreadful Hindu police inspector Shankaracharya. Therefore, he just cannot forget the extremely beautiful young Indian woman he had endured for her sake a lot of pain, torture, humiliation, and suffering, and for bringing her to his country he had done the impossibility. He had paid for her perpetual possession so handsomely from his wealth. Many times, he instructed his Pakistani driver to take him to the desert where he could search for her. He searched all the desert-vast areas around the city of Jeddah for any clue that might lead him to the whereabouts of his missing Layla and the whereabouts of her cute daughter. Even if he could find their bones and bury them, that might give him some comfort. It was all for naught, and nothing came out of his desperate search. One particular Friday at noontime, while he was on his way to the public prayer at a nearby mosque, his cell phone began ringing while he was sitting in the back seat of his brand-new Mercedes. As it is in other rich Arab countries, it would be downright shameful if his relatives or friends caught sight of him driving his car. Men of his stature and wealth are obligated to employ to drive their beautiful cars foreign chauffeurs. Sheikh Ahmed's chauffeur is a Pakistani man. Strangely enough, it is always rumored and strongly believed by many people that most of the children of petrodollar countries have been probably fathered by Indian or Pakistani chauffeurs employed by their wealthy employers. In the face of sexually repressed wives because of their polygamous husbands who always go for teenage new brides, the personal foreign chauffeurs are inevitably practical and useful on beds for those frustrated Arab women. When his cell phone began to ring all of a sudden, Sheikh Ahmed took the phone out of his pocket and looked at the number. The caller's ID displayed the Filipino Beautiful Women's Salon. At first, he thought it was a wrong number and hence decided to ignore it. Howbeit, his sixth sense reminded him of his weekly Friday ad. Biting back negative thoughts, he responded to the call, only to be greeted by the voice of a Filipino woman with a funny English accent. "This is Mrs. Cham Chum Chi, owner of Filipino Beautiful Women's Salon. I calling regarding you advertisement about your missing maidservant, Riha Nakhan. She is sitting here right now in my women's salon. Come immediately and bring reward money and you get her." The happy old woman, Mrs. Cham Chumchi, has not given Sheikh Ahmed a chance to interrupt her monologue. His Pakistani chauffeur translated to him her English message in Arabic, which he heard through the cell phone loudspeaker. The Pakistani young man is a car driver and interpreter, but he gets paid as a chauffeur only. The Filipino woman mechanically rattled off her address and hung up. Glancing up from his phone, the lovesick sheikh pronounced a new destination to his chauffeur, forgetting about his obligatory Friday prayer. At that time, even if the hunchbacked old man, Shaghar Daddy, was circumambulating the Black Kaaba in Mecca, he would stop performing Hajj and go to meet his beloved Layla. He urged his driver to speed to the location immediately and ignore all traffic signals and speed limits. The Pakistani driver is concerned they may attract the attention of police surveillance vehicles, but Sheikh Ahmed shouted, "You work for me, not for the police. If you want your next paycheck, you have to do as I say or go back to being nothing in your poor country. Don't stop the car until we arrive at the women's beauty salon. I will take care of the police." The crazy old geezer is scared of another bad omen or a corrupt policeman like the dreadful Hindu police inspector Shankaracharya who had beaten him to death, or those 2 Saudi policemen who abducted her and hidden her for over a month might come along again and kidnap his beloved Layla from his hands. Moreover, he does not want to endure again the painful experience he had with his beautiful, infidel Christian ex-wife Christy and her impure and uncircumcised lover, Bobby, to come as her Indian Muslim lover Jamal Khan and separate him forever from his Muslim lover Layla in the land of his Muslim holy places. The address recited by Mrs. Chi lay on the outskirts of Jeddah city. Under normal circumstances, it may take an hour by car, but as his employer barked aggressively at him like a grumpy old dog or a love-struck puppy, the Pakistani chauffeur closed the distance in a mere half-hour. The car racing at the speed of light arrived at Mississippi, Philippines' beautiful women's salon place of business in record time, but not before it has been captured by the bright flashes of at least 4 highway cameras. When the crazy Arab man Kais reached the salon, the 3 female Filipino beauty consultants had already finished the face, hair, and body of the lovely Indian Layla, and they began to work on her nails. Rayhana soaked in the ambience of attention being lavished upon her. She is so much enjoying being the queen of the universe for a day in this luxurious women's salon. Before this special day of her preparation for her buyer, Rayhana was dimly aware of her beauty and never cared about it. But now she just could not believe the glorious sight of the beautiful young woman staring at her from across the huge mirror reflecting an image greater than all the goddesses of beauty in India. She even surpassed in her beauty the Egyptian queen Cleopatra and the Greek goddess Aphrodite. The lovely Rayhana thought her exalted Allah had given her more beauty than all these valueless Hindu goddesses because he had chosen her before the foundation of the universe to be born as a Muslim woman. Her past miserable life and present troubles have never given her the possibility to see herself the way she sees her beauty today. With her bad lot in life, she is always worried about something. Now with the promise of a new gainful job, a free and safe shelter for her and her beloved daughter in an opulent residence of an Arab sheikh just around the corner, she succumbed to the seductive atmosphere of the beauty salon, relaxed a little while she is enjoying her makeup treatments and new confidence in her womanly beauty and sexy appearance. As usual, whenever a ray of hope shone in her saddened heart, Rayhana always remembered her handsome lover. Once again, the handsome Jamal suddenly appears in a vision standing before her. He sees her exquisite beauty and cannot resist taking her into his arms and begins to kiss her on the lips. She closes her eyes and surrenders to her lover, melting into the safety of his loving embrace, the lusciousness of his lips, and the tenderness of his loving touches. Her imagination took her away from all the unbearable torture, brutal rape, humiliation, and violence she had experienced in the desert. She miraculously survived and lived through it, for she knows what real love is, and it is this everlasting love she kept safe inside her heart and mind. This dreamy, wonderful state has suddenly been interrupted by a firm, abrasive grasp shaking her right arm. Opening her eyes in terror, she was startled and screamed at the sight of an old man speaking to her in Arabic. Her beautiful moments with Jamal have been violently cut short. A gamut of emotions overcame Rayhana as she struggled to recognize the elderly man standing before her. Her heart rate spiked remembering the brutal raping of the 2 policemen and the cruel beating of the correctional police officer of Allah. She assumed that the lunatic Saudi policeman had come back to arrest her again. By now, she learned that in this no women's rights land, everything is possible. A woman can be taken away from her husband and raped for breaking some stupid Sharia law, such as there's nothing with them to prove their relationship to each other. A vulnerable woman like Rayhana without a male guardian to protect her from these lustful Arab men, for them, she is just like an open pussy that any man can jump over it and rape by a divine right granted to him by the religion because he is the favorite creature of his creator, Allah. Anyhow, peering into his happy face and hearing him calling out her name repeatedly, her feelings of panic evaporated. It dawned upon Rayhana that his face was familiar to her. With her memory failing her, it came as an absolute shock to her when the old Arab showed her an Indian passport with her photo. Another passport carrying the photo of her beloved daughter followed. She thought the 2 passports as the ones she had either left with the great Negro black boy or the 2 previous passports she received from the Muhammad Tours and Travels Agency, which had been taken away from her by the Bombay police officers. Rayhana did not recognize her Saudi sponsor until he mentioned the words Taj Mahal and Kalaba. She immediately recognized Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed and recalled that he was the one who had met her in front of the Taj Mahal Hotel in Kalaba, Bombay. This is the good old man who had promised to give her a work visa to the rich Arab country, which he did twice. Her suspicion turned to joy when she realized that the old Arab man had somehow brought their passports from India and had come here to rescue them. The happiness that was reflected on Rayhana's beautiful face filled the heart of the old man, her sugar daddy, with indescribable joy. He had not even bothered to ask her where she had been all this time, or how she had come to be in the beautiful women's salon. She appeared to him as a bride prepared for her bridegroom. Without further ado, and with much haste, he forked over the reward, grabbed Rayhana by her hand, and took her out of the beauty salon as a bridegroom escorting his beautiful bride from her father's house to his home to consummate their marriage. Little if it followed behind her mother like a little bridesmaid. The reunited pair made an odd couple, comparing Rayhana Khan's age of 22 years, 10 months and 15 days to Sheikh Ahmed's 69 years, 11 months and 25 days. Rayhana was betrothed and got married to her late Muslim husband at the age of 14. His idea of family planning was to give her a daughter and 5 sons in just a little over 6 years of marriage. Had he not taken his own life, Rayhana might have had by now 2 more children. When he died, she was a few months over 20 years of age. Some Indian families have been known to have 25 children. An old Muslim Indian man living in the city of Bombay, who was featured on the front page of a popular newspaper called Asian Age, celebrating his 80th birthday with the birth of his 75th child. Of course, not all of them were from one woman. He was also another Muslim notorious polygamist. Although India is a secular country, it still allows Muslims to practice polygamy. Notwithstanding, polygamy in India is still illegal for Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, and followers of other religions. The current saying then was, if that Muslim notorious polygamist old geezer was to sit near an Indian girl on a bus or local train, she would become pregnant by him. Indian women can be very fertile, much like Chinese women. In 2020, the Indian population was predicted to reach 1 billion. But it proved that prediction was wrong because, by November 2020, the Indian population estimate had reached 138,466,0352 people. Way back, China, of course, had already hit a record number of 1 billion people. Rayhana spoke to her Arab sponsor in Hindi, but he understood nothing of what she was saying. Although he visited India many times, Sheikh Ahmed is not a linguist, and neither has he picked up any Hindi except for 2 words, yes and no, jihan and nahi. In 2020, the Indian population was predicted to reach 1 billion. But it proved that prediction was wrong because, by November 2020, the Indian population estimate had reached 1,384,660,352 people. Way back, China, of course, had already hit a record number of 1 billion people. Rayhana spoke to her Arab sponsor in Hindi, but he understood nothing of what she was saying. Although he visited India many times, Sheikh Ahmed is not a linguist, and neither has he picked up any Hindi except for 2 words, yes and no, jihan and nahi, aside from his very fluent pronunciation of obscenities. One can recollect here the filthy Hindi gutter language he used to insult the lunatic man Muhammad Shaitan Khan when the ugly old Indian woman came to Jeddah International Airport and falsely claimed to be his lovely maidservant Rayhana Khan. It came as no surprise his entire conversation with Rayhana consisted of her name in the affirmative. Rayhana, Jihan, Rayhana, Jihan, which means Rayhana yes. The old geezer has only let go of Rayhana's hand once up unto that time, to pay the crafty Mrs. Cham Chum Chi, who is holding onto Rayhana's other hand. With a wide smile on his face, he rummaged through his suitcase, retrieved his checkbook, and made out a check with the huge reward he promised to pay for the discovery of the hiding place of his lovely Indian maidservant and her cute daughter. He handed the check to the Empress of the Philippine Beauty Salon, bowing before the eagle eye that found his lost diamond in the midst of desert sand and black female coffins that walked and did not speak. After much greatness, the happy old Arab Shahar Daddy reattached himself by the hand to his beloved, the sweet bride, Rayhana. After much greatness, the happy old Arab sugar daddy reattached himself by the hand to his beloved, the sweet bride, Rayhana. He believes that even God Allah, his messenger Muhammad, and his angels cannot take her away from him anymore. Neither her handsome lover Jamal Khan nor the accursed devil Muhammad Khan nor even the terrible Hindu police officer Shankaracharya could dare touch a single hair of his beloved Rayhana Khan in the Islamic land where women are imprisoned behind iron bars and homes as if they were beasts in the zoo or dangerous prisoners. Shakhar, Daddy Kays al-Majnun, said that there is no power in the sky above and no authority on the earth below that can after today separate him from his beautiful Indian lover, Layla, his maid, the lovely bride, Rayhana Khan. The money-minded Mrs. Cham Chumchi has carefully skimmed over the check for errors. Satisfied with the big amount and the signature on the check, she released Rayhana's other hand and gladly accepted the old man's business card with a smile. Otherwise, if he had not paid her huge reward, the Filipino old woman would not have released the hand of the lovely Layla, even if the madman Kais would have to beat her to death. With this huge sum in the palm of her hand, the old Filipino woman completely forgot about the Indian man Aslam Ali Khan, who pretended to be the groom of the beautiful Indian bride Rayhana Khan. The wife, Rayhana herself, also completely forgot about her husband on paper, Aslam Ali Khan, and her new Saudi employer, Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid. By the time the matter of her new employee, Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid, came to her mind, the sparkling Mercedes car of her real sponsor, Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed, had reached the halfway point to its final destination. While in the luxury car with her old Saudi savior, Sugar Daddy, her Arab master, who in Arabic is called her kafil, Rayhana Khan became emotionally immersed in recounting her tragic experience in the holy city. When she noticed that the driver was Pakistani, she started speaking to him in Urdu and used him as her interpreter into Arabic. The Pakistani driver is a university graduate and can speak 3 languages: Urdu, English, Arabic, and a little Hindi. He is more educated than his Saudi employer, who left school in the 10th grade. Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed studied until the 10th grade in an Arabic school for boys only. When Rayhana remembered Aslam, she asked the driver to turn the car around and go back to the beauty salon. She said that she wanted to thank him and apologize to him for not going to the house of his Arab friend, who wanted to hire her as a maid in his beautiful residence. The Pakistani narrated this proposal to his Saudi kafil in Arabic. Sheikh Ahmed suspected something suspicious about this Indian, Aslam Ali Khan, and his Saudi friend, Sheikh Hamza bin Khalid. This story revolves around her being a maid for another Saudi person who is not her sponsor, did not feel comfortable with him. He knows that it is illegal in his country for any Saudi man to employ a foreign maid if he is not her real sponsor who brought her on a maid visa from her country. His suspicions peaked when he realized that the Indian man had taken his Indian maid Rayhana Khan to the beauty salon to get her groomed before handing her over as a maid to her new Saudi employer. Will she go there as a beautiful, decorated bride to meet her handsome groom, or as a poor maid to work for her allegedly rich Saudi sponsor? Firm in his decision not to return, Sheikh Ahmed asked his Pakistani driver to explain to his beautiful maid, Rayhana Khan, that the Filipino beauty salon owner had received from him, as her sponsor, his business card for her to hand it over to this Indian man, Aslam Ali Khan. If he wants, he can contact him by phone and explain to him the legal basis on which he contracted with someone's maid to work for another Saudi man as a domestic help, and he is not her real sponsor who brought her from India. Meanwhile, Rayhana Khan told her story without fear or favor, neither adding nor subtracting anything she could remember from her ordeal in the desert. Weeping, she recounted her kidnapping, severe beating, and brutal rape at the hands of 2 Saudi police officers. She described how her daughter Ifat found a kind Bedouin family who rescued them and invited them to live with them in their tent for a month. Finally, she spoke of the so-called Good Samaritan, Aslam Ali Khan, a kind and caring Muslim man who saved them from the streets and further beatings and imprisonment. She neglected to mention the marriage of convenience between her and the so-called Good Samaritan, Aslam Ali Khan. When she was over, Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed thanked God Almighty and his noble messenger for seeking the help of this good Bedouin family and the good Indian man to help his Muslim maid, Rayhana, and her little Indian daughter, Ifit. While the driver was rushing towards the house, Sheikh Ahmed suddenly remembered the obligatory Friday prayer. A quick glance at his watch revealed to him that there were only 15 minutes remaining until Friday prayer time. So, he decided to go to the house of God and pray a prayer of thanks. The old Arab sugar daddy wants to go to God's house and thank him for finally bringing his beautiful and sexy lover to him. Muslims consider every mosque in the world to be the house of God. The alleged prophet of God, Muhammad, claimed that God gave him the entire planet Earth as a mosque. Based on this promise, Muslims want to build mosques everywhere, even at Ground Zero in New York. Once again, Sheikh Ahmed issued a new round of orders to his Pakistani driver, reminding him of the need to hurry. When the car stopped at the entrance to the mosque, he got out and ordered his driver to take his beloved Indian maid, Rayhana, and her cute daughter, Ifit, to the home of his fourth wife. Sheikh Ahmed does not dare take the maid Rayhana and her daughter with him into the mosque because that is strictly prohibited. A woman who is considered in the religion of Islam to be deficient in religion and intellect and an impure creature is not permitted to set foot in the house of God. The Prophet Muhammad said that a woman, a dog, and a donkey invalidate a man's prayer if they pass in front of him while he is praying. For this reason, the alleged prophet of God prevented women from attending the mosque and ordered them to pray at home.